name JB. I am Jyotsna Bitra. I go by the name JB, a marketing cloud consultant, 4 times Ranger, 17 times certified application architect. I'm the founder and the co-leader of the Marketers Group in Phoenix. I'm also the founder of the MC Learning Camp, where I conduct several trainings, several boot camps to help the beginners and the people in the marketing cloud learn and get more expertise in the marketing cloud. And here's my Twitter handle. And here's the YouTube channel where you can find all the videos and the recordings. So with that, we will dive into today's topic, Email Studio Best Practices. So over the period during the last sessions, you have been learning the guidelines, like how to create the emails the best way. And this session is like an overview of what is the best way to do it, starting from scratch and starting with the discovery and analyzing and testing and checking all the tracking and all of the data. It deals with all of the factors, all the factors that needs to be considered and the best practices that you can follow to make sure that you're sending out effective emails and you are putting your efforts in the right place in the right way. So we are going to look at why email is important and the design principles, which are very important, and the steps to create some effective emails. And we'll also look at the best practices. So what are all the key considerations that you need to keep in mind before creating the emails, and also some checklists that you have to follow before sending out the email or after sending the email. What are the things that you have to ensure that everything is working properly and everything is set in place to make sure that the email is effective? And the session mostly is theoretical. We'll see a lot of content considerations, a lot of things that we need to keep in mind. This doesn't include a demo. You might have seen the demo part in the previous sessions. This is like the overall guidelines, what you have to keep in mind before, during creation process or after the email is out. So why we are stressing so much on the email content? Because email is the highest driver of ROI. So every penny that you put, every dollar that you invest in the email marketing, it gives approximately like 42 times. The returns is 4,200%. So this is still the highest driver, highest ROI. It returns the highest on investments. And this is the earliest touch point. Whenever you're contacting, whenever somebody is signing up on, whenever you have a new person joining, the basic information that you would collect is the email, and next maybe their social channels or the mobile numbers and other details. But to start with, at least you would collect the email address. So this is mostly the first touch point with every customer, and this is also the preferred channel. As per the statistics, 64% of the consumers, they mentioned that they prefer to receive communications via email. And it's also the top 2 email design trend, that the interactive emails, that they are more engaging, and it's the highest top 2 trend to follow. But email designing is not easy. So it comes with some challenges and it needs a lot of considerations. There are so many factors that we need to keep in mind while creating the email to make sure that the email has all the elements to make it an effective email. So it takes a lot of energy, and there are many people involved in creating the email, the images that go into the email, the content that has to come into the email, and it goes through various approval stages, whether everything is in place. The content addresses the goal that is the email is intended to achieve, and also it is connecting with the audience, and there is a lot of thing that needs to be considered with the content also that goes in the email. So it takes a lot of time, energy, and resources. So as per the statistics, it is still the most effective channel of communication. besides Facebook and Twitter and people being active on the social, email still proves to be more effective of all. So these are some of the design principles that email should adhere to. So whenever you are sending an email, it should build the trust. So every email that you send out, the subscribers should relate to that email, and they should feel that it's coming from a from the people that they are, from the company or the brand that they wanted to receive from, that they are expecting to receive the communication from. There should be a level of trust. And also, whenever the email is sent, is the email really useful? It is just some random information, or is it delivering some information that is more specific to that specific user, not just a random content, but the email has some useful information for the subscriber. And whatever that is stated in the email, it has to be clear. So whoever is reading the email, depending on the language, the origin, and their cultural differences, the language you put in the email and the clarity of the email is also very important. And it should also make an emotional connection with the subscriber. So all the subscribers who are reading the same email may not be in the same circumstances. So we have to make sure that the content in the email has empathy in the content. People can feel that there's a connection, and also it should be relevant. So whenever a new member has signed in, and right away you send an email asking them to purchase a product, or giving some cross-product recommendations, that's not the right time to give such kind of recommendations. So depending on where the customer is in their journey, the email content should be relevant. So whenever a customer signs up, so it's more efficient to send the welcome email, giving them all the resources or all the information that they need at that specific period of time. So these are all the design principles that each email should adhere to. There should be trust in the email. The subscribers should feel connected, should feel the content is useful, and also there should be an emotional connection, and the information has to be relevant with what stage the customers are in. And these are the different steps to create effective emails. So whenever you are starting to create the emails, the first step is to strategize. So develop a plan of action. So first you will start with the audience, the acquisition strategy, how you get the audience, and also what are the segments involved from that specific audience. So you don't need to create the audience list and batch and blast them. The audience list, in order for the email to be more relevant, the list has to be segmented, and the email can be sent or email can be personalized depending on that particular segment. So it's important to know the audience and also the goal of the email. What are you trying to achieve with that email? So you're trying to give some information to the subscriber, or encourage them to do a sign up, or asking them for referral, or make some additional purchases, or do some registration. So you have to identify what is the goal of the particular email, and depending on that, develop your content strategy. What content has to go in and what elements has to go into that email. And the next step is design, which is very important. So you have to think about the content that goes into the email, because the content is very important for the email to look effective and visually impressive. So what goes into the email, the colors that go into the email, and the layout, the position, the sizes, every minute detail matters. So in order for the audience to look at the email, open the email, and after they open the email, if you want to drive them to read the email completely and get them to take the action, whatever the buttons that you're including, maybe asking them to sign up or do a registration, in order to drive them to take some action. The design also, you have to make sure that you have all the elements, the buttons, the branding colors, and the sizes. It's rendering on all the email clients and all the devices. So these are all the things we are going to look in detail in the next few slides. And the deliverability is also very important. So you have created an effective email. It's looking very impressive, but it is also very important that the email is landing in the inboxes and it's not hitting the spam traps, and it's not bouncing, and the audience list is all clean. So it's reaching the inboxes. So there's a lot to consider on the deliverability as well. So it includes the following the laws as well that are in place as per the region. So this also requires careful consideration and also establishing a good sender reputation. And analyze. Analyze is is after sending the email, you would see how the email has performed, the open rate, or the unsubscribes, or maybe the click-through rate, or the bounce rate, or the deliverability rate, or the ROI and everything. So this is the step after you deliver the email and then the email reaches the subscribers' inboxes. You will analyze how the email is doing. And the next step is elevate, learning from the previous sends, the metrics that you have already gathered. So you will design the next email strategy depending on the previous experiences, and also taking the learnings from those and implementing and refining them in the next upcoming email strategies. So these are basically the different steps while creating the emails. And let's look at some of the best practices. So as I mentioned, the important things during the creation of the email, the important steps are the design and deliver. These are the things that we need to keep in mind. So first, we're going to look at the design best practices, and then I'm going to slightly touch upon the deliverability best practices as well. So let's look at the design aspects of the email. So when we are designing the email, the very important thing is personalizing. So whenever we are sending the email, the reader, the subscriber who receives the email should feel that connect and should feel that the information is relevant to them. And also they should not feel that they're looking at some random text. They should feel that some person from the brand side or the company side is personally connecting with them and delivering the content which is more relevant to them at that specific time. So as you know, Marketing Cloud is all about delivering the right content at the right time and on the right channel. So we need to make sure that we are sending the right content to the right people and at the right time also. So personalization plays a very important role. And as per the statistics, they improve the click-through rate. So if the customer is feeling, the subscriber is feeling that the content, whatever that is in the email, is more relevant to them, that will encourage them to click the links and access more information. And maybe that leads to increased conversions as well. So personalization can be done in many ways. There are certain elements where you can include as part of the personalization. So before you do the personalization, you identify what items you can personalize. So to start with, the very basic thing to feel that you're connecting with the customer instead of the random user. Instead of saying dear reader or dear customer, the basic thing that you would do is dear first name, last name, dear the person name. It makes the reader feel that you're talking to the person and not to a random customer. So identify the places on the information where using which you can personalize. And segmenting is also very important, because whenever you're planning to deliver some dynamic content or the personalized content, so you have to identify to whom you are delivering. Let's say there's an audience list for all the people based in some specific region, let's say Boston. So if you segment the list segment or identify through a attribute, if their gender, then you can deliver personalized content to one segment differently and to another segment differently. Example, for all the people in Boston, if it's a woman, then you will send some product recommendation which are more suitable for women. And if the subscriber is male, then you would send some personalization or the recommendations that suits for a male. So depending on that, you would be able to personalize the content in the email. So for that, you need to identify the segment or the attributes which identify them. And as you collect the data, as you have all the data, you can easily display the content which suits for that particular subscriber. And another example could be people living in the tropical region versus the people living in the winter climate. So the product recommendations would be different for each of them. So depending on the location where they are, if they are in a tropical climate, then you would send some different product recommendations. And if they are in a different region, maybe in the winter time, you would send different recommendations. So that whatever message that is personalized, it feels like more relevant to the customer at that point of time. And then it may encourage them to take further action. So as for the statistics, 84% of customers say that being treated as a person and not just a random number is very important to continue to get them engaged or to win the business. And also the emails with personalized subject lines. So on the subject line as well, we can personalize. So subject line is something which is visible even before we open the email. In the inbox, we can see the from name and the subject and the pre-header. So subject line as well, we can include some personalization. So the emails with personalized subject lines are 26% more likely to be opened. If in the inbox, I see some email saying, hey, open this same email versus, hey, JB, open this email to know more about your upcoming stay. So that makes me feel that it is something important for me to read. Then I'll go and open the email. So this is important to include the personalization in the subject line as well. And marketers have found a 760% increase in email revenue from segmented campaigns. And these are some of the areas in the email. This is just an example where we can do the personalization. The basic thing would be including the first name and the last name. So it can be in the subject line or in the content when we are even before even displaying all the content, you're addressing the person. So it's always suggested to include the first name. And in the content of the email, the images you see here, right? Congratulations on 30 days of exercise, Jane. So it addresses the subscriber by the name. They included the first name here. So it feels, now the person who is reading the email feels that the data is about them and it is more relevant to them. And it can be images and it can be the content and the links that are getting displayed. It can be at multiple places. And this is an example where it gives detailed information about that specific information. So it's not just a random email which contains some generic information that is sent to all the subscribers. So it is email which has personalization elements included. And these personalization elements are displaying the content that is specific to this specific customer. So Kate is the customer here in this example. So it shows the points that Kate has, and also it's saying that she has these many points and it's now time for her to redeem the points. It also defines the stage where she is in, and it also encourages her to take the next step, go and redeem the points. And it also gives some information and some directions here. So by looking at the email, this is very specific to that specific reader or the subscriber. So if we are, whenever we're sending an email, we have to put ourselves in the customer's shoes. So let's say I am receiving the email and I am looking at this email content. I feel so connected. Hey, this is information about me and this is the next step that I can take. So that would help me to take the next step. And that ultimately builds the engagement and also wins the loyalty for the company. And I'm also going to take you through some of the examples where the personalization has been done in an effective way. This is an email example from Airbnb. So as you see here, it has all the beautiful images included. So it's not all the boring content. It has some images as well. And images also, they are appropriate to the time and the location. So when it seems the customer has booked at Berkeley and in the location San Francisco. So it has the images specific to that location. And also not just that, it giving location-driven suggestions, all the suggestions that are more relevant to the location. For example, all the events that are happening. So maybe how to get from the airport to the hotel, and to keep themselves engaged. If they want to go out and spend time out, they can look at the events. So what are the events happening in the next few days? So if they have booked the stay for on 20th, these are the suggestions of all the upcoming events the next few days. So this is one example where the email content can be personalized depending on when the event, the stay was booked, and also the location where it is booked, and the next duration of the stay, all the events that are happening. And this is also another brilliant example from GasBuddy. So in this email, this is for a specific customer, and it is listing out all the efficiencies and the errors the customer has made, and some other information to get them more effective. It is also giving some tips for them. So these are all specific to that individual who is reading the email. The driving habits, the tips, how many times they have hit the handbrakes, or how their fuel efficiency is and how they can improve. All these information is included. Not only that, it has some buttons as well. If you look at here, view past trips. So this button is easily visible on a different contrasting background. This orange color makes it pop up that as soon as they look at the email, they see that their attention will be diverted to this button. And also the next button here, it's on a white background. You see this orange button, and it is also wide enough, and the content, the information on the button, view past trips, is self-explanatory. So click here instead of click here, they wouldn't know what they would be getting once they click here. So it clearly mentions what's the purpose of that button. So we're going to look at these buttons, about these buttons also in the next 2 or 3 slides. But these are important considerations about the buttons and the layout, the colors, and everything comes into, everything here is of important. What data can you personalize on? It can be multiple data. So first we have discussed about the name we can customize, and the location, depending on where they are and depending on the season, or depending on their behaviors, their past purchases. They have purchased so-and-so product, then you can provide some recommendations to cross-sell a different product. And depending on their interest in a particular product, you can recommend something, or depending on their location or the customer status. If they are a gold member or a platinum member, depending on that, you can send some customized promotions or some information. And there are multiple things that you can personalize on. These are all the different data that you can collect on the collect on the individual. Some of these are the ones that you collect, and some of these are the ones that you gather over a period of time. Let's say you have the name and the email number and the geolocation. And then as you keep sending the emails, you would gather some information about their past purchases or their interest or their behavior, how they have been opening the emails. So you would gather all the information and tie together and use that again to personalize the upcoming emails as well. So there are many benefits of personalization. So users are more engaged when the content is personalized for them, and that increases the engagement, the higher open rates and the click rates, and that eventually results in increased return on investment. And it continues to build the relationship. So it keeps the customers engaged, and ultimately it makes them loyal, and they're effective for the analytics as well. So once you send the email, you gather the analytics and tie them together and use the same information again to send some product recommendations, or in the upcoming emails, you can use that content to personalize further. So this is all about the personalization. And the ways that you can personalize in the email is, to start with, you can use that strings, the first name within the percent signs. You can use some strings that are system variables. So first name, last name, and some system variables are available out of the box. So you can, whenever you're creating the email, you can find them in the content builder UI itself. So you can use those tags. And also there is dynamic elements available in the content builder, where you can drag and drop and then set some filter criteria and set some rules for the content to display dynamically. And you can also use AMP script. If you want to do some complex functionality, you can include the AMP script in the email content. So depending on the AMP script, it renders the content. So this is all about the personalization. And the next thing, I have briefly touched upon this, the importance of the call to actions. Call to actions are the buttons. So whatever we are including in the email, they should be catchy. So if you look at this example here, this is a bad example where it says buy now. So it doesn't stand out. The button color is also the same as the background. So it's not standing out as a button. It just looks like a random text. This is on the right, it's a good example where on the light background, a contrasting color, the button is clearly visible. And also the text on the button is more appropriate for the function that it's going to do. So when you click on the button, you really know that the button leads you to buy now, or leads you to the cart, or something more relevant to that, whatever that is mentioned. And buttons need to be big, bold color, and obvious, and area labels. So, and here you see this is also a good example where you see that this is for happy, and this is 5-star, and this is red is for not so happy, not happy, and this is 1-star. So depending at looking at this itself, you would know which one is more relevant for your experience. These are some of the tips. Your call to action should stand out, clearly visible, and use colors. And colors should follow the brand guidelines. So use colors to make sure that they're popping up, and also make sure the placement and the text that is displayed is also visible and catchy. Drive results with a strong CTA. So in order for the reader to take further action, so the CTA also is very important. So you have sent an email and the reader has opened the email, but if the reader is not taking the action that you were expecting, the email is sent for a specific purpose. So you send the email to encourage the reader to sign up, but the reader has opened, but it's not leading them to the sign up because of the bad CTAs or bad content in there, but the email performance will be impacted. So it's also very important to have strong CTAs, which are more visible, catchy, and it should lead the reader to take some action. These are also some of the examples of good CTAs. See, this is on a different color background, on a light color button color. You have this text, which is more relevant. And also on the form here, you have this button, and here using the white color, but on a different contrasting background. So it clearly pops out. So these are all the different examples of how a good CTA can look like. And as you see, all the information, all the text that goes on this button is self-explanatory, and also it's relevant to the email. Whatever the content that is specified, it's relevant to that, and it should lead them to take the appropriate action there. This is also another example where it's very easily visible. So different contrasting colors and the text. And the next one is the responsive design. And even if you are analyzing your own habits, it has most of us has shifted from opening the emails from the desktop, and we are mostly checking the emails on the smartphones. So if the same email has to go to different devices, some people prefer to open them on iPad, some people prefer to open them on a smartphone. So wherever that is accessible to them, people use different devices. So the same email has to render nicely on each of these devices. It is very important to make sure that the email is responsive. So depending on the width, as you see here in this GIF, depending on the width of the device, the width of the email is also shifting, and also it's more appealing to that specific device. If it is a mobile, it is just compacting, and it's making sure that all the content is also visible properly. And to start with, since most of the users are opening their most of the readers are opening their emails on mobile devices, start with mobile. Test your email messages, how they render on the mobile devices. And these are a few statistics. So going by the devices that they have been opening on the smartphones, it's almost like 50% people are opening on smartphones. On the desktop, only 30%, and on the tablets, and the 16%. And 2/3 of the emails are being opened on smartphones and tablets. And if the email doesn't render properly on the mobile device, 70% of the customers, they immediately go and delete that email. And a responsive design leads to higher click rates and leads to more conversions. And this is another statistics where the email views are coming in from what device. So considering that, build a mobile first responsive email. So make sure that your content is brief and organized. So if you put in a lot of content and it has to display all the content in the mobile device, so you need to do a lot of scrolling, and you need to read a lot on the mobile. It doesn't feel comfortable to the reader. So make sure that the content is very brief. Whatever you intend to send to your customer, to your subscriber, just include that information, and don't include any additional information which is not relevant at that specific time. So you can make use of the content blocks to keep the messages focused, and it also makes the messages easy to scan. And also limit the image sizes. If the image size is too big and it is too long or too wide, it may not render properly. So make sure that the images also small, and whenever the images cannot render, use alt tags. And background colors, also make sure that they are poppy and catchy. And whatever the importance of the message, that has to go in the first page. So instead of the need for the reader to scroll the pages for the email, make sure that all the important information is on the first page itself. And also the ideal resolution should be 600 to 640 pixels width. So it displays nicely on the mobile devices. And once you have the mobile first design, then you can include all the interactive elements, the personalization elements and the CTAs. And later on, you can include those elements later on, but it's ideal to start with how it renders on the mobile device, and it fits nicely on the mobiles. And we have seen how the email should render nicely on different devices. It's also important that the email messages are opened on using multiple clients. So if you look at your audience list, you would see my email clients as Gmail, Yahoo, or Yandex, or many other Outlook addresses. So there are many different clients also, and how the design renders on each client also differs. So whenever you're creating an email, if you're effectively involved in the email creation process, you would already know that you would test the email rendering on different devices and also on different email clients as well. So some elements are supported in some clients and some are not supported in maybe on the Outlook. Most of the fonts are not displayed. So it's very important to consider the font type and the font sizes and the elements that are going into the email to make sure that it's rendering on all the email clients. So for that, you can make sure that the colors and the content is consistent across all the emails. So whatever the emails that you're sending and all the landing pages that you have on the website, they all follow the brand guidelines, and also they have the same branding, the colors, the font and everything. And CTAs, make sure that you're also guiding them to take the next action by including appropriate CTAs, and only have the important information in the first page. And depending on the email client, it's some elements may not work. So it's very important to test and make sure that those elements are rendering nicely. And most of us prefer to read the emails in the dark mode. It's also very important to make sure that the emails are rendering nicely on the dark mode. And dark mode is always easy, and it reduces some stress on the eyes. So most people prefer to read the dark mode. So make sure that the preferences are set for the dark mode as well. And the next important thing is the subject line, sender name, and the preview text. So even before opening the email, these are the ones that are visible in the inbox. So make sure that the subject line is more relevant. It should be simple and no nonsense. And the pre-headers that go in, also they should state the purpose of the email. So that should encourage them to open the email. And also it should not be misleading them, or it should be clear enough that the reader knows what is there in the email. So let's say, click on this to know a secret. It doesn't say anything. Maybe it creates some curiosity, but it doesn't say anything what the email contains. So it's also important that the subject is more relevant to the content that is mentioned in the email. And the from address, it should be identifiable and recognizable. By looking at the from name, they should be the reader should be able to identify from whom the email is coming, and is that something which is relevant to them, or is it coming from spam or some unwanted senders. So the reply address also set it up so it makes sense, and make sure it the preview text, so it also renders nicely. So, and I want to take a quick pause here and ask a question. Can you say what a BIMI is? BIMI or a full form of BIMI is? And if you have implemented it, can feel free to share. Anybody who wants to spell the full form of BIMI? So, okay, this is the brand logo. Yes. So in the inbox, you see a list of all the emails, and before the email sender name, there will be a logo. So in the logo itself, you will be able to see some image. So this can be set up for the emails. So that's right. Brand BIMI stands for brand indicators for message identification. So this is also another part where you can configure to make the reader feel that it's coming from a genuine resource or from someone whom they already know. And over the period, you keep sending messages, and in order to gain the trust and the confidence, make sure that you get the permission from the subscribers first, and also communicate with them what they can expect from the further email communications. So set those expectations before itself, that you're going to send out some information about the products, or you're going to send out some transactional messages or anything as such. And always make sure that quality is important. In order to, instead of sending 100 emails, just one quality email which drives them to take some action is more worthwhile. So don't send too many messages which are not useful, and also it may lead to more unsubscribes as well. And if they want to unsubscribe, it's very important, and it's also as per the CAN spam, that the unsubscribe link should be clearly visible, and also it should function, it should be functional, and also they can be unsubscribed within a specific set period of time. And before sending, warm the IP. So the IP address is fully warmed up, and it has good sender reputation, and the email messages land in the inbox. And be consistent with the messages, and also in the message content, make sure that the messages are relevant and you have the empathetic tone as well. And you may be sending the messages to different people from different cultures, regions, genders, castes, so many things. So we all differ in a lot of ways. So it's very important that the single email addresses all of these, right? It has to have the message should be applicable to everyone, and also it should not feel that certain people are ignored or excluded. And some people may have disabilities as well. You have to take accessibility into consideration as well. What about a person who is blind is reading the email? How they're going to hear the message? So if when there's an image of what are they going to hear for that image? So alt image or alt HTML tags or something like that, or is it something which makes sense to the person who is hearing to that message is important. And if, let's say, some person is colorblind, and how they can differentiate the colors, these are all some accessibility considerations as well. And these are some principles that we need to consider. Start with the tone, the right tone, and also consider context, whether it is the right time to send the message, and if it is relevant, and whatever in language that you're using, that it is very important. And stereotypes, don't include anything as such which is a controversy. And when you are including some generic addressing, like so if you make sure that you're not only addressing Mr. or Mrs., it should be appropriate. So personalization also plays an important factor there. And whatever the content that goes in is very important. That's the reason the email goes through different approval processes, and also there is a specific content team which gives the content, what the content which goes into the email, because the language has to be appropriate. There may be some legal complications if there is some misguidance or some misrepresentation in the content as well. So when you are putting the content in the email, it has to follow some guidelines. So there are many things that we need to consider. So maybe at the beginning phases, when we start learning, we think that email sending is just like we put the sender name, subject, and then you put some random content and send it. But there are many things that we need to consider, not just including the relevant content, but also the language that goes in the content. It should not hurt anybody's feelings, or it should not look like a biased content. So that's also important consideration. And stay relevant depending on who you are sending the email to. Make sure that the image is the content is relevant to them. And also make sure that you're not just sending the email to sell a product. More than what you want to send, what you want the reader to know, you also need to focus on what they need, what the subscriber need, what the customer need at that point of time. So send only the relevant information for the customer, not the relevant information that makes sense for your business to grow. Content hierarchy, and order your content. So whatever the content that goes into the email, sometimes the email spans multiple pages that needs some scrolling. So if the reader has to scroll multiple pages, keep scrolling, and has a lot of content, that also leads to disengagement. So make sure that there is limited scrolling, not more than 3 or 4 pages. So and even before the need to scroll, all the important messages should be on the first page itself. And the CTAs are visible on the first page, and it should lead the reader to continue reading the next message as well. And the next one is make the forms emails interactive by using interactive elements in the content builder itself. It is available wherein you can put some interactive elements, so people doesn't need to go out to fill in some information. So it leads to more engagement, and it gives more personalized connect to the reader. And some examples can be like if you want to get a survey, or if you want to collect some important feedback, then you can include some interactive elements within the email itself. And another thing is AMP for email. So it's a new edition, but not so new. 2 years ago, it was introduced. So it helps us create some content which is very dynamic, and it also helps us create include some carousels or sliders, where in the email we can include some carousel where the reader can click on them and look at multiple images, or get to know multiple information in the single email, so that we're not including the content on multiple pages. Including a carousel helps them. If they're interested, they'll just scroll through and get more information. If not, they can just scroll down and get the other information that they need. And one example can be a store locator. Depending on the subscriber where they are located, the store locator, it gives the Google map image of the nearest store to them. So they can plan to go. If they have ordered buy online and pick up in store, they can just go to the store location and pick up the item. So these elements can be included in the AMP for email. And other examples can be including the schedules. So depending on what time, when, which date the reader opens the email, so the content specific on that date will be displayed. So as you see here on the right, it gives the appointment dates and the times that are available. So without leaving the inbox, the reader can take the action necessary. And lastly, we're almost reaching to the final things. So this is how a email design should look like. So on the subject line, it should be catchy and engaging, without not just encouraging the subscribers to open the email. It should be more relevant. And the content width, it's preferable to have it 600 pixels or 640 pixels wide. And all the colors may be coming from the images or from the text or from the buttons. It should adhere to the brand guidelines. And the pre-header or the subject or the content that goes in, it has to be more relevant and personalized. And this is at least the first page of the email should follow the inverted pyramid principle. So the images that are included, the text that is going in, and the buttons, it should lead them to take some action to get the information right away by looking at the email. The text hierarchy, use the font colors, font sizes to get more attention, and manage it in a way that leads them to read further. And include some animations and some meaningful images. Depending on the content that are including in there, the image also should be something which is more relevant. And whatever the content should be meaningful and relevant, not just like always promoting your products. Some helpful tips for them or some information. It should be like the information what the reader wants to read, not the information that you want to send. And not too many messages or not too much content. There should be a balance between the images, the content, and the buttons as well. And also consider the accessibility. So what if a colorblind person is reading, or a person who cannot see wants to listen to this email content, how it is getting, how it is rendering. That is also needs to be considered. The clear and concise content, and also the web fonts. Are they getting displayed on all the email clients? Some fonts are not supported on some clients. And if the image is not displaying, what is the alternative text that should be displayed? And also make sure that all the images are not taking too much of space. The size also needs to be considered for the image to load faster. So if the email is taking longer time to render, then the customers, the readers might lose some interest, and they may want to click something else. So make sure that the email renders in time, and it's not taking more than 3-4 seconds to display. And the file size ideally should be under 300 KB. And if it is a GIF, it can be under 1 MB. And make sure that you adhere to the CAN-SPAM laws. The physical address should be mentioned, and the email address or the unsubscribe links, and all the information is clearly visible and actionable. The links are all clickable and working. So it's set up here. And all the content that is displayed in here as well, it's clearly visible because of the way that they are arranged, the images, the content, and what that is coming in. So this is an example of an effective email design, which you can follow. So finally, I would like to share a checklist. These are all the things that needs to be considered before sending, or during the creation or after the creation of the email. So firstly, start with the goal in mind. So what is the goal of the email? What are you trying to achieve with that email? And how should you measure the email performances? So the goal, the email is to encourage the reader to make a purchase. So is there an ROI, or the purchase click-through rate, or increase in revenue? All the KPIs that you can consider to track the performance of that email. And segment your audience, or make sure that you're sending to the correct audience. And many of you might have experienced or heard from previous experiences that the email was sent, the correct email is sent, and the email has all the best elements. It's beautifully done. But what if the email is sent to the wrong audience, right? It's very important that you are sending the email to the correct audience. Make sure that whatever you're segmenting is the appropriate, and also apply all the suppression and exclusion lists. So somebody who do not want to receive, or you're sending an engagement email for the people who have already signed off, or some people who do not intend to receive the promotions, make sure that you're including them in the suppression or the exclusion list, and apply the list while you're sending the email. And the important thing, personalize the emails and use strong CTAs, actionable CTAs, and the subject line, sender name, and the preview text, and the BIMI that you include in there. That should be appealing, and it should encourage the readers to open the email. And the links that you include in the email, they are very important, right? You include the links in the email for the readers to take some action, or to give them some more information where they can click and then they can go to an external website and take some action. If the link is not working, then the purpose of the email may be missing out. So make sure that all the links are working and the UTM parameters are set, right? If you want to know the click-through rate, how many, what the click rate is, and how many are converting, then you need to set the UTM parameters as well, and the analytics code to the email. So make sure that is all in place. And if when you are segmenting the audience, or when you have the list, the audience list to send to, make sure that they are opted in. And also in the suppression, make sure that if they have opted out, or the preference center is coming from the external preference center, make sure that that preferences are also considered and they are excluded from the email sent. And depending on the region and the country, there are many laws that you have to follow. Make sure that the email follows all the regulations. And if you don't adhere to these laws, it can hugely affect the budget. Like you may be charged for one wrong email sent or for one complaint that is received. It may be like $40,000 or something chargeable for a single complaint, for a single email. So make sure that you're adhering to all the compliances. And also I touched upon the content that goes in the email that should adhere to the legal regulations as well. So make sure that the content that goes in follows the legal guidelines as well. So it's not hurting anybody's feelings, or it's not biased. So the content also is something which needs to be considered. And when you're sending, it's a basic thing that we should all do, and we all do regularly, spelling and grammar errors, and make sure that there is the unsubscribe link and also it is working. So if the link is there but it's not working, or if it is working not effectively, not as per the guidelines, as per the spam law, I don't remember exactly, I think it's 15 days, within 15 days the subscriber has clicked on the unsubscribe link, they have to be unsubscribed. So that needs to be in place. And even after the email is sent, the link should be functionable until the next 30 days. So make sure that the link is working, and occasionally check the reputation of the IP address. So you can run some reports or get in touch with your Salesforce support to get a rundown of how the IP address is doing. And there are some external tools as well where you can check the sender reputation. So do an occasional check, or when you're doing the audit of your Marketing Cloud instance, make sure that you're checking the sends, account send summary, and also the bounces, the unsubscribes, and all different factors that affects the reputation. And before sending the email, run a spam filter to make sure that you are you have all the valid email addresses in place. And these are some of the checklist items to make sure the design is all working well. So make sure that the email renders properly on all the mobile, desktop, and webmail, all email clients. And make sure the plain text version. Some people may not prefer to see the images. They do not want to download the images. They just want to see the plain text. But most of the email designers, they ignore and they just more focus on the HTML contents, the images and how they render and everything. But what if the reader has chosen not to download the images? What if they have chosen the plain text version? So that also should be more visually attractive as equal to the HTML version. Use Retina images to ensure images load and they're not blurry. Whatever the images that you're loading, they are clear. They are also not taking too much of size. The dynamic content and personalization, test it thoroughly. And there are many cases when we heard the personalization going wrong. So they intend to do one, include the name, first name, dear first name, but then something else, some other string is included, which totally makes no sense. So make sure that the dynamic content is rendering properly, and whatever the personalization elements are included, they're all rendering properly. And if not, the content is not displaying, what is the fallback? So we have seen at the AMP in email, so that the dynamic content coming in, what if the dynamic content cannot be displayed? What is the fallback image that can be displayed, or the text that can be displayed? That also needs to be planned before. So all the images that are used are accessible and are not broken. And if they are not loading, what is the text that needs to be displayed instead? And test in dark mode to make sure that the colors are not changed or it's all rendering nice. And merge tags, whenever you have set them, make sure that they are rendering properly. And load time, not more than 2 to 3 seconds. So it should not, the email should not take more time to render. The size is less than 102 KB. Email is accessible to screen readers and those with visual impairments. So if somebody is cannot read and they are taking assistance with the screen readers, so that should make sense to them as well. That is, the screen reader should also be able to identify all the elements. So that's a lot. So here's a recap of the things that we have discussed. There are so many things to consider. It's not just creating a simple email and sending it out. There are so many things, like what goes into the email, in the subject line or in the content, the images that go in, the deliverability, how to maintain the reputation, so many things that go in. So we have covered a lot, but all these are very important aspects to keep in mind. So we have seen why email is important and what are the design principles. It should be useful, it should be trustable, relevant, some of the design principles. And we have also seen the different steps, starting with setting the goals and designing, analyzing, elevating. So there are multiple steps that the email process goes through, and some of the best practices, the personalization, very important, the CTA, the responsive design for all the devices, the dark mode. And over the period of time, the email sent should earn the confidence of the subscriber, and the email should be inclusive, and the content should be relevant. And the hierarchy, the content should follow a hierarchy with all the important messages and the click to actions coming on the first page itself, and make use of the interactive elements, the dynamic elements, and the AMP for email or the Einstein features. Make sure of the make sure to use them to identify the content that is appropriate. Using Einstein copy insights and the Einstein content selection. I don't remember if I'm saying it right. Send time optimization also helps to send the email at the correct time. So these are all, and these are some of the additional resources that can be helpful. So I think that is it. Any questions?
I think we have one question, JB. The one is, depending on all these factors, what could be an estimated time to build an email campaign, including testing?
So there is no generic answer, Lakshmi, because it depends on the campaign. Some campaigns, let's say it's a promotional email that's already done. It's like triggered every time. But if it is some promotional event, occasional email, and it has to go through multiple steps, starting with the different steps that we have seen here. And also it goes through multiple approvals. The images should come from the content team. What goes into the emails needs a discussion, and the text that goes through different approvals, and the legal team also has to review that. Depending on the type of company that is sending the email and the type of message, the content that goes in the email, it takes longer. If it is just like a transactional email, you order something and you get the email, that is one-time thing where you have certain elements already in there. The content is already predefined, that what the purchases they have made and what the recommendations or what the next steps that you want to encourage them to take. But if it is something like a promotional, occasional send or some informational thing, then it takes longer time and needs careful consideration as well. I would say if it is a promotional email or some guidelines email, it would ideally take from 3 to 4 weeks. And also it depends on the type of campaign.
All right. Thank you, Jyotsna, for the answer. So I have one question where, so typically as a best practice for warming up your IPs, so do we require a minimum duration of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or what is your recommendation for not going all the emails to the spam for repeated IPs?
So for the IP warming also, we have some guidelines. So we can start sending by specific domains and not blast all the emails at once. That will definitely impact the reputation, and it will end up not landing in the inbox. So slowly start with lesser number and then increase the number. So there's some guidelines for the IP warming as well, where every day you keep increasing the number of sends, and you can also do that by the domains. So for that, you need to arrange your senders list and then start sending it. So that ideally takes at least 30 days for the IP warming to be completely set up.
All right. Okay. There's one question from UV. How can we exploit the links provided in additional resources? They seem to be static.
We can share with them the PDF, the presentation deck. So the links can be accessible, or if you want, I can send them in the email as well.
All right. So I'll share the presentation slides with them when we upload in the YouTube presentation.
Sure.
We're on the session. All right. So when it comes to one more question, when it comes to Einstein content selection, right, Shibi? So we do have Einstein content. Is it a best practice to enable Einstein content before we start a Marketing Cloud engagement to start the Marketing Cloud project, or let's wait for 1 month of time when we build some kind sort of a content uploading into Marketing Cloud? Do we take some time to enable the Einstein content, or is it a best practice to enable from day on onwards?
For the Einstein to work, it needs some basic data. It needs some data which is already in the system. So once we enable Einstein features, it takes some time to gather all these insights. So it collects, it gathers some information that is already in the system and then uses that information to tailor the next sense. So it needs some time to understand the behaviors of the audience as well.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Audience, anyone has any other questions? All right, I think we don't have any further questions. Thank you, JB, for your valuable time for both the sessions. I think it's such a privilege that you're here, and love to share all your comments across both the sessions.
My pleasure, Fanny. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you once
again. I hope this session is information. I know this doesn't have a demo and it is all like going on and on, but I think at least this is helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, JB. Yes, Shruti, Einstein ST also required some time to train itself like Einstein. So every Einstein required some time to train themselves, about 30 to 45 days of time. After that, the results will showcase automatically. Thank you. Thank you, JB. Thank you for joining with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.